and welcome to the Rangers News YouTube channel. We are joining you after Rangers somehow managed to edge out a 1-0 victory over Celtic at Ibrox to send them 19 points clear. To say the game kind of turned in a moment would be an understatement. Rangers obviously won via an own goal. We didn't even have a shot on target the entire game, which came after Near Beaton was sent off. Big plaudits need to go to Alan McGregor, who kept us in the game in the first half. We'll unpack it, but first, Jordan, what were your initial thoughts on the game?
Really bizarre watch, wasn't it? Because it was just the first half was abject, and the second half, sort of the first 15 minutes, I thought Hadji brought some sort of energy and injected something into the game. Obviously, James will be pleased with that because he thought he should have started. But I think he brought something, which was the first thing in the entire game. It looked like Rangers were maybe setting up to let Celtic have a bit of the ball, and the plan would then be to hit the break and go in behind them, try and force them into doing things, but that just turned into Rangers not doing anything and being so sloppy in possession in the first half. But as you said, it just completely turned on one moment, and Rangers capitalised. Well, they capitalised, but it's in off McGregor's arm, so like he's made the major contribution, and it feels like they've absolutely stolen one. And I think the contrast maybe with Gers at the end, that he's maybe learned his lesson a little bit in terms of big celebrations from last year, but I think you could sort of tell at the end he knew that they got away with that, got the game plan probably wrong. The players didn't sort of execute what he obviously hoped for, but he's got the result, and at this stage it's literally all that matters because the gap is now massive. So a huge win.
How about you, Jim?
A massive win. That to say Rangers got away with one is kind of understatement just a bit. But at the same time, that's the games that win you titles. That's the ones when you're up against it the first 60, 70, 80 minutes, and then you sneak one out that you look back at the end of the season as the games that won you a title. And I think that's very much going to be one of them. To get an Old Firm win without even a single shot on target is just incredible. But I completely agree with Jordan. The first 45 was brutal. It was just so poor. And listening to Gerrard speak after the game, you kind of get I think they kind of mentioned in commentary that maybe Rangers were deliberately trying to let Celtic kind of have more of the ball. But listening to Gerrard, it very much didn't seem that way. They were just really quite poor. Second half, Hadji made a massive difference. I think it was just things looked a bit more positive, and they tried to get at Celtic a bit more and kind of try and pick out these wee gaps. Although I'm curious at the reason behind taking Roof off, whether it was tactical or not.
The one thing, so just when you're saying that there, I'm just thinking about how similar that sort of was to the League Cup final last year, but the complete opposite. Because Celtic did nothing in that game and then scored obviously the goals offside and really got away with one there and got a trophy out of it. And it seems that like that could be pivotal today in terms of Rangers not producing anything but actually getting a bit of luck that they haven't had for several years in terms of big games like that. So yeah,
I think the similarities didn't just end there either. Obviously their keeper had played an absolute blinder in that game, and so did ours. I mean, for me, the first half was atrocious. I can agree with you, James. I don't think it was a tactic to give Celtic the ball. I think you've got to give credit where it's due. Celtic were hungrier. They were more fluid when they were moving it. I don't think that Rangers were completely out of the game, but I think when we had opportunities to get forward, we were wasteful. Very wasteful. The amount of slack passes was just so poor. When you said when you talked about Roof coming off a half time as well, I thought it might have been a Rebo. I just think that Celtic's game plan and the way Celtic wanted to play was dominating the match, and I don't think Rangers kind of managed to get a sniff. But like I say, you kind of give them credit because every time we had the ball, we were just turning around and playing it backwards. We had no space, we had no out ball, and when I was watching, I was thinking if we can get to half time and we get 0-0, it was kind of written. Do you know what I mean? If they don't get a lead, then the game can turn. But yeah, so the game starts. Obviously, Celtic kind of look like they've got more energy, more impetus early on. And then the first of McGregor's kind of moments, absolutely outstanding save from Odsonne Edouard. And they blew it up. I don't think it was offside, so maybe the second one was better. But James, talk us through that save.
It was just incredible, and it shows you why McGregor's just so important to this Rangers side. That's one of the ones where his reactions are so good to it. I think that's the biggest thing. And the second one as well, like you mentioned, the speed to get up and get back and get his composure and be able to stop the second one's just so important. And I mean, you can see why they kept talking about the comparison between him and Gorham on commentary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought he was quite shaky actually in midweek. He struggled a couple of times taking balls from crosses. I don't know if that was, he obviously played it quite cool after the game, but it was a big moment for him, 400th appearance. But unbelievable today. And yeah, that save, the second one, how he sticks the arms up and then, have strong enough wrists to keep it out. It's just fantastic.
Yep. I think after that maybe is when Morelos went in on Frimpong. I think a lot of Celtic fans will be very frustrated in this because Morelos obviously gets a yellow card later in the game. I thought it probably was a yellow card. Andy Walker was kind of overplaying it and being kind of ruthless. I thought a lot of the commentary towards Morelos was quite OTT, but I think it was probably a yellow, but it's an old firm game. It's that old kind of cliche in the first kind of 5 to 10 minutes. You want to try and lay something on somebody and let them know you're in a game. From there, Rangers' only real opening from the match was that we kind of worked it across. We managed to get it in. Aribo finds Morelos. And I thought when in that build-up play was an example, Celtic looked a little bit shaky in defence. We never tested them enough. And maybe if we tested them more throughout the match, that would have been clearer. But do you think that was unlucky? Do you think Morelos should have done better?
I don't know about better. I think it's just one again that kind of. I don't think he's expecting it. First of all, it just kind of falls to him, and I think maybe had he been in the middle of a long scoring run, you might have seen him do a bit better with it. But it's one of those ones where it just kind of happened. So
I think after that then came another Griffiths effort. This time it was easier to save from the one that came afterwards. So he puts it in, McGregor gets a strong hand to it, there's a follow-in, I think the referee blows up. But the next save is just absolute. I mean, the first one they're completely different saves. You know what I mean? He gets down, he gets his body well, he gets his positioning right for the first one. But the second one, Jordan, what did you make? What did you make of that? The big.
It's one of those ones where it's a proper, like you're proper blown away by something that happens. It's just pretty rare, isn't it? Like when you're watching games, because initially you're like, I think he saved that. Like it's clear it's hit the post. I think he's got a finger in that, and then it took a couple of camera angles to get the right one to show it was well in the top corner, and he's got a significant fingertip on it to get it on the post. Is like absolutely game changing, because the fact that Celtic came out of the block so quickly, the fact that they're on top, if the score there, it completely changes the complexion of the game. The only reason yes, Rangers got a bit of luck later on in the game and all that, but the only reason it was possible to win it at any point was because of how well McGregor did in the opening half an hour. And I think you can tell Griffiths is, he's been in and out of the team and he says a lot for himself and all that, but he does have good technical ability on his left foot, and that was a brilliant effort, but just such a good save, and essentially what turned out to be a match-winning save, because if that goes in, as poor as Rangers were for that stage, it still would have a good while to get in at half time to regroup, and it could have went a lot differently. So yeah, absolute stunner.
Yeah, I think after that as well, for me personally, I don't know how you kind of felt, James, going in after that and having Celtic kind of moving the ball much better. It was much more fluid, and when we got the ball in kind of offensive positions, we were just giving it away. We were working backwards. I mean, did you feel the worst going from that save to half time?
Not really, because I think when you kind of look back at a lot of Celtic's best efforts, I mean, if you take away the couple in the first few minutes, they all tended to come from distance. You know, they weren't looking like they were going to get the park and necessarily kind of really, really trouble the Rangers defence or McGregor. So, no, I kind of had the feeling that the longer it went on, it was going to either take a sucker punch for them and catch Rangers in kind of one of these rare attacks or a massive mistake. I didn't have that feeling that, you know, that everything went forward. They looked like they were going to score. They had a lot of the ball and they had it in a lot of dangerous positions. But, I mean, the saves that I can remember McGregor making mainly came from kind of them trying to luck a little bit more than anything else.
I think it was the theme that they had as well, because they were trying from long range for the entire game, and they were ballooning it a lot of the time as well. I mean, I know the start count, I was going to say that they had so many shots, but I actually think it only turns out they had about 3 on target or something like that, and 3 or 4 maybe, but I think 3, and they had multiple shots, but so many of them were just ballooned over the bar. You know, it was a bit wild. But sorry, Jordan, what were you going to say?
I just think probably the more, you know, when obviously it was picked up and Celtic did start very well, but I think a lot of that was to do with their press and their ability to sort of handle the ball in possession, which was not what Rangers were doing. Not necessarily the fact that they were slicing Rangers open at will during the open stages of the game. So yeah, that the best save from McGregor comes from a shot from outside the area, where yes, ideally he closed down the shot beforehand, but it's not as if Rangers were like, oh, what's hit us here in terms of we can't regroup enough to keep breaking through the lines and that sort of stuff. It was the fact that Rangers couldn't hold on to the ball, and the best part of Celtic's game was the fact that they did look so much hungrier in terms of the press and getting around players. So yeah, it was one of those ones where yes, it seemed like Rangers were fortunate to get in at the break level, but as in, you know, only being a goal down would have been a fair reflection of the game, not, you know, 3 or 4. So yeah, I think Celtic were strong, but not looking like, oh, this is an incredible outfit. It was more that just it was so unfamiliar performance from Rangers in the first half compared to what we've been seeing so far this year.
As like a wee aside as well, I mean, we kind of spoke about this in the run up to the first one when you're talking about not having any fans. I thought in this game throughout the whole 90 minutes, you saw the kind of more tactical battle and everything was a little bit more concise and stuff, and everybody was kind of more disciplined and it wasn't quite as reckless. And obviously, that would somewhat change in the second half of the red card and there was a stramash. But getting in at half time for me, I thought was vital. And similar to you, James, I thought that was huge. I thought that the fact that they hadn't scored was big mentally, and I did think Rangers had to change it. He obviously takes on Hadji at half-time for Roof, who showed a couple of good touches. He was kind of spinning in and out, but he wasn't really in the game. He takes Hadji on, opening kind of a couple of minutes, he ends up turning his kind of shot from long range. James, what do you think that introduction done for the game?
I think it reminded Celtic that they weren't going to have it all their own way. It's that kind of spell in the game where if it's a repeat of the same pattern that had been before the break, I wouldn't have been surprised had Celtic then gone undominated. So kind of getting that wee burst activity for Rangers, having that shot for Hadji, and I think there'd been maybe 1 or 2 before that had kind of threatened their goal as well. It reminded them that they were very much in a game here, and it wasn't just a case of showing up and they were going to get 3 points.
Yeah, I thought that he was kind of confident when he came on, and he showed that a kind of directness that we hadn't had. So anyway, after we came out of the restart, Jordan, did you think that Rangers improved?
Well, I do think Hadji made a difference because that was the first. It was just all slow, and I thought I did think Aribo. Obviously, he then ends up playing a crucial role, sort of semi-inadvertently in the goal. But I thought he was poor in midfield, and it's sort of what we talked about beforehand, about the fact that Rangers would lack probably for me the Arfield factor, maybe more than Jack on that right side. And that tenacity and the pace and his ability to come and link up with players and get in behind, but it's the energy that he brings that Aribo doesn't have in terms of the way he plays. He's a really silky player with brilliant ball control, lovely dribbling ability, but in those sorts of games, yeah, is he right in the middle of the park where you're needing a bit of physicality. I think you can still tell that he hesitates when there's 50-50s. And there's one that he ended up fouling Edouard, and it shouldn't have been a tackle at all. He ended up being late. It shouldn't even have been a tackle because he should have been there beforehand to pick it up. And I thought Rangers were just slow in there. So when Hadji came on, then he was prepared to come from midfield and link up with players. And it's just the fact that he injects a bit onto the ball, releases it, looks to go and do something off it. I thought that changed it slightly. I also thought Tav did very, very little in the first half. That's obviously part of what Celtic were doing. We're trying to push him back, and Laxalt was getting forward. But I think the first time Rangers really had any sort of go-forward ball was when he created it. And that's so he's obviously so key for Rangers and how well they've done so far this year. So if he's there driving people on, that's where a lot of Rangers' good stuff comes from. So and then it was him. Ultimately, it played the ball in behind that led to the red card. But yeah, I think it was slightly improved in the second half. But obviously, the turning point was the red.
I will move on to that now. I think after the match, Neil Lennon was complaining, said that he didn't think it was a red, thought it was soft. I think, right, when the ball comes through, obviously it comes from right back, pings it round. Morelos is pinning Beaton, who is not a centre back, right? He's a midfielder. He's got the turn on him. It's very smart for Morelos. He turns him. He rugby tackles him on the floor. I think that Beaton thinks that Ayer's covering. I think on a replay, you can clearly see that Morelos is going to get in. He's going to have time to steady himself. He's going to have time to shoot. It is a clear goal-scoring opportunity, regardless of what Neil Lennon says. What do you think? Do you think it's a red card, James?
Every day. There's no debate for me at all. Absolute complete red card.
It's one of those as well. It's like the split-second decision that he makes, but I think you can even tell when he's protesting afterwards. He knows it's a red card. Like, he knows he's going. And I think for all, it's regularly, it's just the same thing. I think for Morelos, it's frustrating seeing him in old firms and what he can deliver, and the fact that when he's getting, he's going to get booked, and you're sort of wondering what he's going to do next in terms of discipline in these games. But that is him at his very best, and I think it wasn't quite as concrete an example maybe as see it in the Europa League last year when every defender comes too tight, he turns them and he's away, and he's absolutely brilliant at that. That was more just shielding and running inside the line of the ball, and he totally took Beaton out of it, and he did very well to work it in that situation. He knows if he's touched there, it's a red card, and there's certainly no element of a dive in it either because he's literally grappled from behind, brought down. So yeah, it's a clear red card. I think Lennon's probably just very frustrated, and his team has been outplayed regularly in this fixture recently, but they're actually the better team today and still lost. So I think he's just a bit frustrated with that.
I think he should probably look at himself for starting a centre midfielder at centre back against Morelos. You know what I mean? If anyone is to blame for it, I suppose Beaton first, but it's too tight to him, and then he turns him, and it's a red card for me. But I think from the moment that they went off, Rangers just transformed. We didn't rush, we didn't force the issue. We got dominant in possession. We moved the ball around, and I think there was an experience and a calmness towards Rangers. They're driven by Stephen Davis, who I actually thought was excellent throughout. I thought that he was the best player in the first half for us, and I think that outfield's probably the best player in the pitch throughout the game. But after that red card, how do you think Rangers reacted, James?
Well, I mean, you look at the free kick that came directly from Beaton's foul on Morelos, and I think it was Hadji and Goldson both come within inches. He scored from that. It was almost like a light switch.
I think on that one as well, I think Goldson is gambling and he thinks Hadji's going to get it, so he stops. But I think
I think that's fair. But I think had that been a similar free kick 10 minutes earlier before the red card, would have very much wasted it, and that probably would have hit the first man. The whole game just completely changed on that red card, and I think that free kick, and just maybe the next 5 minutes or so, because I mean you got the goal coming just shortly after it, and it just, that wee spell summed up just how different Rangers were after that decision.
So yeah, the goal, obviously we get a corner. I can't remember exactly where the corner came from, but we get a corner. And and in it comes, and so obviously I was watching the post-match analysis and stuff, and they were talking about it, and they were talking about Edouard moving off the front post, making Barkas move towards the front post, and then them having no one on the back post. But Jordan, is this the kind of luck that you need to win titles?
Yeah, it's just the sort of thing that just hasn't happened for Rangers in the last 2 years. It's been when other teams turn up and see during especially January, February, early March, these sorts of things. Every other team's seems to have had the luck of the or the rub of the green when Rangers have sort of been down, and this, you could say, this is also a poor January performance, but it turns into a massive win. And yeah, it's Aribo, like, he probably should get more on the header, but it's clear that his touch then means that it goes in off McGregor, because he has absolutely no time to react whatsoever. And then it just loops up kindly, and I don't know if you can really blame him for it, but I think when it must give you plenty of hope. Say Rangers didn't even have a shot on target today, but Barkas inspires absolutely no confidence in nets for Celtic, and I just think that in terms of the contrast from last year, say in that League Cup final when it was Forster, to what they have now and what they've paid big money for, is maybe a sign that Celtic aren't as hard to break down or as hard to get past as they used to be. And I feel like if Rangers got several efforts on target that fancy themselves to score a couple of goals, and it only needed one from an unexpected source today.
I think you're right. I think Celtic managed to get blocks in whenever Rangers get into possession. There was obviously the one with Ayer and Morelos, and then there was one later on when Duffy calamitously passed it to Kent, I think, and then Eaton fired one over as well. But they kind of closed us down and stopped us being able to get them shots on target to properly test Barca. So I kind of pointed out as a weak link before the match. He inspires no confidence at all. It's like he genuinely has a weakness, and that's a weak position. I think it's overstated a wee bit, but it is true. I think you can get at Celtic. So from there, Rangers go 1-0 up. How do you think Rangers managed the game after that, James?
Yeah, fairly well. The last maybe 5-10 minutes or so got a little bit nervy, but I think largely after that it was the Rangers of old, controlling the ball, moving it well, making Celtic do a lot of the work. And yeah, it was the excellent game management we've seen for Rangers time and again over the last 2 or 3 years under Gerrard. So happy to see it out that way.
Yeah, I think that's where Davis comes into it. Like, I know you said you thought he was a standout. I thought he could have done, as all of the midfielders could have done more in the first half, because I thought we were getting overrun in the midfield. But when it comes to that, and it's a situation where you have an advantage, I think the sort of belief drained out of Celtic a little bit there as well. And he's just so good at dictating the tempo and having sort of security on the ball and that sort of thing. So yeah, there wasn't too much in terms of hairy moments towards the end. I think once it was 1-0, I don't think Rangers were in much danger of giving that up. But yeah, obviously fortunate enough to get in that position, but they've got good players then. And I think we were talking about it before the game, that Aribo is so good in that situation when there's a lead to protect and that sort of stuff, whereas he was a little bit rabbit in the headlights at times during the game. And then you've got Kamara, so you have 3 really good ball players there in the middle who maybe didn't play exceptionally during the game, but when it comes to individual moments, have great ball control. And Itten does brilliantly, I think, when he comes on in that role. It's definitely the right decision to bring Morelos off, and he's just so powerful, so willing to run in behind and hold the ball up. So I think he's a great guy to have for that sort of situation, and I think he is unlucky at the minute to not be playing or not getting any real significant game time, but it certainly doesn't seem to be getting him down, because every time he comes on, he's full of enthusiasm and wanting to impress.
I should talk just before he came on. Obviously, there was like a massive Rami. I think kind of Celtic were losing their heads a wee bit. I think the Kent turns Duffy. It's in the middle of the pitch, not like a clear goal scoring opportunity, but he absolutely scythes him down. There's a lot of kind of commentary pre-match or post-match rather, people thinking that it should have been red. James, what's your opinion on that tackle?
Oh, it was a nasty one, but I'm not sure it was a red card. I've seen them given, but it was just that kind of lazy, cynical tackle. It's one of the ones you'd probably be a little bit annoyed if it was given against you in similar circumstances. So I can see both sides of it, but for me, nah, it's not a red card. It's close, but it's just a lazy, cynical tackle.
What about for you, John?
Yeah, I think it's just a poor challenge from somebody who he was beaten, sort of in open play and with plenty of space in behind him. But I think if it's Goldson, he does the same thing. Balogun, he does the same thing. I think it's a yellow, and you know when you're doing it, in the act of doing it, that you're getting a yellow and nothing more. So yeah, poor challenge. But the one actually I thought, and I haven't seen it back in the replay, but the one I thought had a bit more venom and was more dangerous in the first half was Sorrow's one. But I didn't get much of a look at it after that. But I thought he came over the top of the ball, the studs up, with plenty of energy into the tackle. I thought it was a really poor challenge. But Kent's one, it's not really endangering an opponent, although it's going to take you down when you're going at pace. But I think it's just a booking.
And then obviously that sparked a reaction. I know, like, the reaction, it was kind of more handbags and stuff, and it's not worth kind of focusing on blowing up on. I think there's complaints that Madden was holding back Morelos, and Brown grabbing his face and stuff, and it was just kind of handbags. But what I actually love to see the reaction of the Rangers players in that. I think that when it comes across, all the players are sitting back and Kent up. They're right across. Like Aribo, who we've obviously spoken about, maybe not pulling out of 50-50s, he's sitting there arguing with Chris Aya and stuff, I mean, beyond doing anything stupid, do you know what I mean? I like to see that kind of commitment and that feistiness, and I thought that was a sign of the kind of togetherness of the team and how committed they are to the cause. Obviously, Morelos then gets subbed off for Itten. At that point, it comes on. We've kind of touched on him. I think there's probably two more major moments in the match, and they were both Celtics. Ball comes over the top, Barisic headers it, and then or Edward touches it, and then it falls to Elyounoussi, who shoots from about 25 yards out. Was your heart going at any point there, John?
To be fair, he hit it. I thought it was in. I actually forgot about that. As soon as it came off his foot, I thought it was in. And it was a decent effort from somebody fluffed his lines a couple of times against Rangers in the past, and it was a decent snapshot after coming on. But yeah, I think when you're restricting, teams are obviously gonna come forward at the end and they've nothing to lose. Yeah, they were down to 10 men, but you expect them to get something of sort of concrete off on target or towards the goal, and it was a decent effort, a good strike, but yeah, heart and mouth for a couple of seconds, but not McGregor not called upon that time.
Well, what about you in the final dying moments, James, when Elyounoussi kind of slips it through to Edward and Goldson manages to get back? Did you get nervous at all there?
A little bit, but it was one of those ones where sometimes you just kind of get that premonition that we're going to score. You just didn't see it happening. It was a bit nervy, but I kind of had that feeling if it was going to be one that came, it was going to come from our own doing. It was going to be a big mistake for somebody, and it didn't feel right, for want of a better phrase. So no, it wasn't too nervy a moment.
I also think when it comes to Edwards, I think it probably shows a difference from a couple of years ago, in that he's obviously a very talented and technically good striker, but I think a couple of years ago he just scores early on. When we're talking about the McGregor saves, he takes the keeper completely out of it and scores. If that's a couple of years ago, when you're playing against the weaker Rangers teams that they're winning 5-0 at Ibrox, I think he scores there, and he certainly doesn't give McGregor a chance, even though it's a brilliant save from the follow up. So yeah, I think I'm sort of with James. It was sort of the fact that Rangers were one up seemed strange in the balance of play, but there was no didn't really fancy Celtic to have the belief and then the conviction to actually turn it around at that point, and that's probably because we've seen them slip up so many times this year that it's now not a surprise as such. Whereas in the past it was a big shock if they dropped points anywhere. But right now it's just not, and it's happened so many times in the last couple of months that I didn't really see it changing in the last few minutes.
So the final whistle then goes. Celebrations a little bit more subdued from last year's Old Firm New Year game. But Rangers stretch the lead to like an emphatic 19 points. Celtic obviously have 3 games in hand, but they're not going to be easy. They have to play Aberdeen and Livingston, 2 out of the 3. I don't know what the other one is, but huge gap now. Do Rangers have one hand on this trophy, James?
Yes,
yeah.
Without question. I think Celtic's grasp now in terms of them being in control of the title. It's Rangers know they can match Celtic from now until the end of the season and still have like a 4-point gap or something. So we have very much got one hand in the title, and I hope the SPFL are looking at the red, white and blue ribbons.
What about for you, John?
Yeah, I think next week's a relatively big game as well, or when Rangers go to Aberdeen and stuff. I think that's a big game, and there are some difficult ones coming up. But yeah, it's one where I'm just very reluctant to say anything like this because what we've seen the last couple of years, like it's just you just don't want to be tempting fate or making any big assertions, but it is so clear. The gap is so clear, and the 19. It looks ridiculous when you look at the table. It looks absolutely ridiculous in comparison to what things have been like before. And I think, as Andy Walker was saying on commentary, there's absolutely no guarantee Celtic win their games in hand. Whereas in the past, it would be an absolute given when it's silverware on the line. So, a guaranteed 10-point lead is huge. No one, even the most ardent Gers fan, would have predicted going into this season, when we're talking about he's under pressure to win things, that at this stage you'd have at least a 10-point gap in real terms over Celtic, and it's huge. Obviously, there'll be another Old Firm, and that there'll be chances for Celtic to make dents in it, but it's just so hard to see them going on a winning streak like the 14-game one that Rangers are on at the minute, which they would need to do, and Rangers would still need to stumble considerably and Celtic win every game to turn it round. So I don't know. I've said I'm not. I don't think there's one hand on it, and then give you all the reasons why there is. So you can take it from that what you will.
I think it's just being superstitious. People aren't superstitious; just don't want to take any chances. So for me, I mean, it's unbelievable. Like, it's unbelievable. I'm trying not to get too carried away either. After everything, after the last 10 years, to now be sitting in a position where it really is within our grasp. Like the last two years, I think we've all been guilty of getting carried away, and I think part of that is because we've seen a transformation in the Rangers team, which we were like, we didn't really see coming. Maybe we were getting excited about what was happening in Europe, what was happening at Celtic, being able to beat Celtic, and now the pendulum and momentum fully swinging into our favour. I'm apprehensive to say that's it, or it's done, because it's obviously not, and we've seen what's happened after Christmas before. But what a position to find ourselves in at this time, and I'd love nothing more for us than to go on to lift it come March, April, when everything's when the landscape of things is a little bit different than that. Like, what a monumental boost for us, and I think across for them, I mean, their genuine fear of seeing us gallop to this is becoming more and more real, and I think it's about us. But it's so good after everything to see the kind of pain that they're going through be inflicted. I mean, that's the kind of thing that would have happened to us. Do you know what I mean? What happened today? It's the kind of thing that they've been doing to teams for so long, and now they have to stew in it. It's like, we could have hammered them, but there's something satisfying about beating them that way as well today. And I think we deserve massive credit, huge credit. We're going to now the transfer window and some huge games in January. So Aberdeen, Motherwell, Hibs, all away from home. Send it on. But I do think Rangers are going to have to step up their performance. I think that we're going to have to play better in a lot of them games. But we'll take confidence from that. And today's our day. It's Rangers fans' day. It's Alan McGregor's day. And is there any kind of closing statements you want to kind of make on it?
Just want to congratulate Callum McGregor for fulfilling a lifetime ambition by scoring the winner for Rangers against Celtic.
His 11-year-old self is buzzing, isn't
Oh, no, I'm happy enough of that.
it? Okay, well, thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day, Rangers fans, and roll on Aberdeen next week.